Hi, everybody.
Welcome to Coffee Side Chat, a podcast about anything and everything.
I'm Janelle,
And I'm Malik.
and welcome to the show.
Yeah.
So we always start off with our most important question. What are you drinking, Malik?
Today, just water. I haven't had nearly enough water the last 2 days, so I'm going to take now to do that. And what about you?
I am drinking, so I'm really excited about this because we've had, what is it called? The Costco bulk brand of coffee for a while. And I'm like, okay, coffee's coffee. I'm going to drink it because coffee's coffee. But yesterday we got a new coffee. And I'm so excited.
Ooh, new coffee.
So there's a tribe in the area and they have their own coffee roasting company. It's called Tekelma.
Mhm.
And I don't know which coffee we got from them because the beans are in the grinder and I never saw the bag.
Oh.
But it's a very smoky flavor. And yeah, I'm just really excited to have not Costco coffee today.
I understand.
Been sipping on it like nonstop. I'm like, there's still coffee in there? I don't care if it's cold. I'm going to keep drinking it because I'm excited because it's got so many flavors in it. Yeah, it's a little bit nutty, a little bit smoky. It's yummy.
I want some
And
of
then
that.
the other day, hold on.
Uh-oh.
So, the mom of the house, she left a bag full of coffee, like 4 different kinds of coffee on the table the other day. And I was so excited. She asks me almost every time she goes to the store, she's like, is there anything I can get you that would just like make your day and brighten your day? And every time I'm like, I can't think of anything. I'm like, I'm good. And then the other day she asked and then she left. She came back and then she had to leave again. And when she did, I went and checked and I saw that bag and I was like, oh, I didn't realize that this is what I wanted, but I'm so excited. So there's like 2 different kinds of Peets and there's some Brazilian coffee and I'm stoked.
Yeah, really, coffee is always the answer. If you don't know what you want, coffee is the answer. Just remember that.
I know. I actually had thought about it a couple days before and I just kept forgetting. Anytime she would ask, I was like, I'm good. Like, no, I'm perfectly content. And then she brought that back. I was like, oh, I forgot I was going to ask for this the other day. I'm so excited.
Well, congratulations. Got some new coffee in your life.
Thanks. So, got that important piece in. We could end the podcast right there if we really wanted to. But we have a fun topic today that I found from one of my cousins posted this on Facebook, and I was like, ooh, this is so interesting. So then I decided maybe we should talk about it.
And I agreed, so here we are.
Here we are. So we're talking about, it's the gist of the post was ask culture versus guess culture. And we talked about it a little bit. Do you think you can explain those, Malik?
So we have 2 personalities, ask personalities and guess personalities. Ask personalities typically are willing to ask for something they want with the understanding that the answer could very well be no and be okay with it. It's not a big deal to them. And with guess personalities, there's a lack of willingness to ask for anything you want unless you're fairly certain the answer will be yes. That way you kind of avoid the disappointment of being told no or anything like that.
I think it's more of like a manners thing. Like you don't want to come off like, so I come from guest culture. And I think it really is just like, you don't want to ask for something because you don't want to impose on somebody else, because the understanding is that if you ask, like, you're obliged to say yes. So if the understanding is everybody's going to say yes for whatever you ask, then you don't want to ask for things unless you think it's going to be yes anyway. Otherwise it's rude because then you're like, give me all your stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I am definitely from the other side of that coin. I come from, ask culture where it's like, hey, you want something, you need to say something, or no one's going to bother to give it to you. And so you may or may not get it. If it's reasonable, you'll get it. If it's not, you don't, and you just move on. It's not really a big deal one way or another. And you don't really come across as rude because it's like, well, if you want something or need something, you don't say anything, then how is it, rude to ask for it? I don't know. Just never came up like that for us.
Yeah, I feel like ask culture is less demanding of asking people to read your mind. Like the expectation is nobody can read your mind, so you better just say what you think and say what you need and say what you want, so then people will know. But guest culture is more of like understanding the nuance and like being able to read people and being able to understand what people need before they need it. So it's a lot of like it seems like it's trying to be very hospitable in nature. But when you're interacting with a lot of people who either come from ask culture or are not part of like your inner circle and you don't know them super well, then it becomes really, really, really difficult because they're not trying to read your mind and they don't know you well enough to try to read your mind. And they might not necessarily want to be super generous or hospitable to you.
Yeah, and even more than that, it never crosses their mind on whether or not they should be trying to read your minds. What for? Like, speak up. Why should I be required to figure out what you want? If you know what you want, say something. And it's just for people who are askers, let's call it that way, call it that. They are, tell me what you want. I may say no and you just have to accept it, but I might say yes, just make it known and then we can negotiate on the other side of it versus knowing that there's going to be a yes on the other side doesn't really mean anything. Got told plenty of no's when I was younger. Didn't stop me from being an asker for sure. So
I come from guest culture, but I'm kind of pushing myself towards ask culture because I see so many benefits to it like that. Like if you grew up in ask culture, you're accustomed to hearing no. And so I'm sure you take rejection so much better than I do. I do not handle rejection well in any sense. Like you can tell, like when I worked at Home Depot, you could tell me, no, I don't like that door. And it immediately hurts me. I'm like, I don't want to hear the word no. I don't want to say the word no. But I'm not used to hearing it. So that's why it's not comfortable for me. Whereas you, I'm sure, are so much more comfortable with it.
Yeah, and using Depot as an example, if someone asked for a color recommendation, they didn't like the kind of palette I showed them, I'm like, okay, it's your paint, whatever. It's like I don't really have to like it, you have to like it. So I don't really care whether or not you say yes to it or not. It's just okay. Well, you need to figure out. Don't ask me for something and then don't like the answer. That's another part of it. Don't ask if you don't want to hear the answer I have.
So the cousin who posted it, she was talking about when she joined the military. She said she, like me, was raised in guest culture and is pushing herself towards ask culture because she got to the military and realized they're not going to just guess what you need and just offer what you need. Even if you really, really need it, you have to ask for it. You have to go get it. You have to do what you need to do to get the job done. And that means you can't wait on somebody else to read your mind. And so she and I think, are both going through a similar, like, she's probably light years ahead of me, but similar transformation of like, there's so many benefits to just forcing yourself to be an ask culture because guest culture is hard because it is a lot of nuance and a lot of just understanding other people really, really well, which is also really helpful, but it seems less helpful when you're coming from that.
Yeah, and there are times where you may think someone might want something if you're an asker. You're like, well, you want them to be willing to come to you for something they want versus putting it on them, because a lot of people who are guessers are kind of feel pressure to say yes even if they don't really want it. So it's like, well, I'm not going to put it on you to put yourself in a situation where you don't want something, but you'll take it anyway. So a lot of askers are like, no, you want something, you need to say something, because I'm not going to go out of my way to offer you something and then you basically throw it in my face or do a poor job of it. And that just is more annoying than anything.
Yeah, it's funny to see how askers and guessers interact. Like I see myself with the little girl in my house when she wants something. Sometimes she'll just kind of like point to it or reach towards it. But I'm trying, like I can feel myself trying to push her to be an asker. And so I'm saying, please use your words. I'm not just going to hand you something because you've indicated that you want it. Yes, I know that you want it because like I understand you and I understand what reaching towards a bottle of water means. But you have words, use them, ask for it.
Yep, that is my favorite thing to tell my nephews. Use your words. I'm not going to just give you something because either you're throwing a fit about it or you bring it to me. That doesn't, you have to use your words and ask for it. If not, you're not going to get it because my perspective, you have to teach them that as some of my older uncles and cousins will say, closed mouths don't get fed. So if you don't say anything, you can't expect anything good to happen. So
Yeah, that is so true. But on the flip side, like coming from guessing, you don't have to ask for it to get it. You sometimes just get it. And it's so nice to have somebody just hand you something that you know that you need or something that you really want. And they're just like, hey, do you need a glass of water? And it just feels so hospitable. So I wonder, no, that wouldn't be true. I was going to say maybe it's a geographical thing. And I was like, hold on. I'm from the north. You're from the south. The south is known for being hospitable. We got this backwards. But I wonder if there's any correlation to anything with who comes from ask culture and who comes from guess culture.
I don't know. I don't think it's geographical, but I think a lot of it just depends on the environment you're in. Because I have some cousins that are guessers and some that are askers, and it just happens to be that way. And they're from the same parents. So it's like, I don't know how this happens that y'all can be so completely different. Maybe, a person was an asker, got too much rejection. It's like, screw it. I'm not asking anymore. But then also, maybe a person was a guesser and then they realized that, hey, nothing's happening the way I wanted to. I need to speak up. So I think that could be a lot of kind of the back and forth of that. So.
Yeah, I think that second one is probably more of my story where I was guessing all the time and like waiting for people to guess and things were just moving too slowly. And I was like, I gotta do something about this. I think the first time I probably like pushed for guessing or pushed away from guessing and pushed towards asking was when I first started at Home Depot and I didn't want to be a cashier anymore. And I started like bugging supervisors about it and asking different supervisors like, what do I need to do to be put on the floor? Like, I do not want to be a cashier anymore. Please let me be a regular associate. And so I would like ask managers, ask HR, ask department supervisors until finally like people gave me answers and I was like, that's not a good enough answer. How do I change that? How do I make it not that? And that was probably the first time I really was asking. That was a long time ago.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I realized that, especially after I got to college, that asking can really be a benefit. This was me when I started at Office Depot, and the store manager sitting down with me, and we're going over the paperwork. He's like, "So how much do you want to get paid?" And I told him, and he goes, "Huh, okay, I guess that'll work." And he just wrote it down and kept moving. But I realized a lot of people who had started there before me didn't have, what they would have considered a high enough starting pay, but it's mainly because they didn't say anything. So if you don't at least put it out there, it kind of hurts.
Yes. My cousin was also saying like a lot of women and especially conservative women are probably pushed to be more of guessers too, which I totally agree with. Or at least mostly agree with. I haven't thought about it too much specifically in that context, but for the most part, I think I do. Anyway, that happened to me too with Home Depot. I had been working there for like 6 to 8 months, and a new guy started in lumber, and I asked him how much he made because I'd been reading about like a lot of hush hush about talking about how much people make and how it's ruining people's lives, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna start talking about money because like nobody can tell me not to. And so I asked one of my coworkers, and he said he was making like $2 more than me. And I was so upset. I was like, what do you mean you're making $2 more than me? I've already received 2 raises and you're still making more than me and you just started. And so I asked him, I was like, so how are you making more than me? Why are you making so much more? He said, well, they asked me how much I wanted to make and I asked for this much. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's that easy? You just do that? So then when I worked for Whataburger for a little bit, I did what you did. They said, how much do you want to make? And I had 2 separate interviews. The first time I said one amount, And then the next time I said a different amount and they gave me the higher amount from the second time. And I was like, what? This works. I'm going to do this forever. And then I got my first career job and they asked me how much I wanted to make. And they told me it was more than I had ever made before. And I was like, I'll take that. I'm not going to ask for more.
There's always a fine line. But there is the other side of that coin where sometimes as an asker, you come across as, rude or aggressive in certain situations where you don't think you're being rude or aggressive. But if you're not training yourself to learn how to read a room, which is why you need to have a little bit of guesser in you. If you can't read a room, you're going to make some mistakes and you're going to put off a lot of people who wouldn't ordinarily be put off by something, but you can't read a situation well enough to know that being gentler or a little less forward in certain situations would be beneficial. So there is a downside to being so straightforward, so blunt. So
Yeah, for sure. Trying to think who I know who's an asker who comes off. You're an asker, and sometimes you come off as a little blunt and a little aggressive, and some askers come off as just super demanding because they just ask for a ton, but they're always expecting to hear a no.
Yeah.
But then they don't hear a no because they're around a bunch of guessers, and guessers are like, well, I'm obligated to say yes.
Exactly. Yeah, that's, we used to have a friend who would want to come visit all the time, which is kind of like the origin story of this whole conversation, where he would just want to come visit. And we're like, well, depending on the time of year, we might just say no. But I would have to say no because my wife is a little more on the guesser side, where she doesn't really want to just tell people, no, you're inconveniencing me and I don't have to deal with it. And that's where I come in a lot of times, like, no, we're not doing that. No, I don't care. I don't care if they're, good friends or their family, whatever. If it is a severe inconvenience for us, heck, even if it's a mild inconvenience, I will say no just because it's a mild inconvenience. And from my perspective, and a lot of askers, is like, we don't have to be inconvenienced. You should be expecting to hear a no just as much you should expect to hear a yes. It should be 50-50, and whatever you get versus, expecting to hear yeses.
Yeah. But yeah. Like guessers don't want to hear no, but they also just don't want to say no. And it's like I have to have a really, really good reason to say no, which, like you and I have seen with my schedule, I end up saying yes a lot because I feel really bad saying no, and I don't want to say it, and I don't want to disappoint people. So I say yes to more than I maybe should.
Maybe should, definitely should. Way more yeses than you need to. But
oh gosh.
But there are, I'm sure some of the people you would be saying no to, they're askers and they're fine with it. They're like, okay, that's completely okay. But not necessarily knowing where everyone falls on that scale could make it a more difficult terrain to navigate versus with an asker, we don't really care the terrain. We're just going to take the four-wheeler over it and just see what happens on the other side.
Yeah. I'm not on a four-wheeler. I'm on a bike and just praying that there's no nails in there and just hoping for the best. And I'm very, very, very timid about the whole situation sometimes. Every once in a while, there's like a bubbling up of courage of like, I can do this. I got this. Let me go ask. And then the rest of the time, I'm like, no, I'll just be quiet and hope for the best.
Yeah. That hoping for the best, askers are more like, we're going to make it the best one way or another. But you can, like, as a supervisor at my job, you can kind of tell the guessers. So as a supervisor, you have to be able to, I need to approach this person in a slightly different way so they don't get turned off or they don't get scared of the responsibility I want them to have. Because, you see people who have potential to, you maybe want to move them up or whatever. And you have to kind of gently push some people into that. Like, hey, how about you do this extra couple things? We'll give you this special project to see how they handle it. But it has to be more like a suggestion, not so much a, hey, I want you to go do this. And, kind of imagine, you don't tell them explicitly that it's to see if they can move up. But you have to give them some, put out feelers. Now, there are some people who are askers like, okay, the other part about being an asker, you have to earn it. So you're going to get told no a lot. there's some different people I've had to tell no to, but that's fine. That's fine.
I think one of the reasons I lean towards guessing is I have so little self-confidence in my own ability. So I'm waiting for somebody else, like with promotion type stuff. I'm waiting for somebody else to say, oh, you're really good at that. Or we think you could do this before I even consider asking, unless I'm just absolutely 100% sick and tired of where I am. Like at Home Depot, when we had our yearly review, they would talk about, are you interested in management? And they would tell me straight up, like, we think you could maybe be a supervisor at some point. And that was super encouraging, but I couldn't at the time. And now I'm like, I don't ever want to just go up to somebody and be like, I want to be a supervisor, because I'm not that conceited / confident. So
yeah, I can see that, which is weird for me because I am an asker and I do, it was like, okay, fine. And so I got basically thrown into being a supervisor. It wasn't really that much of are you sure you want to do this? It's like, no, we want to put you on this track. This is where you're going. We're going to do this. And it was like, hey, you need to go apply for that position or do this, this, and this. And I just was like, all right, cool. Because I didn't mind. Now, if I thought it was going to be a major inconvenience, obviously it would be like, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. But, cool. I'll take the promotion, more money, more responsibility, but whatever.
So my old supervisor, I think, was an asker, because he would tell me to ask for things and he would ask for things, and he just kind of like promoted being an asker just very casually, and never expected me to just do stuff, even though I had a reputation for just getting stuff done. But my new supervisor, I have realized. So my old supervisor, I'm talking about the one at Home Depot, so like several years ago. My new supervisor as of a month ago, she is definitely a guesser. And I figured this out because she would like hedge her questions to me sometimes. She was asking if I was going to come back next year, because I'm on a 1-year contract and they were considering maybe not applying for my position again, and not having somebody like me come back next year. So she was saying, we really like working with you. If you wanted to come back, we would seriously consider it. So I'm going to ask a very forward question, a very blunt question. Are you considering coming back? And I was like, that is not a big deal. Like, I've been telling everybody for months that I'm not coming back. Like, that's not a super blunt question to me. Like, go ahead and ask. And she didn't want to ask. She wanted to just know without having to ask. But she doesn't know me well enough, and I'm not around her often enough because of all the COVID-19 stuff. I'm at home, and she's at her home, and I only talk to her on the phone. So it's really hard to like get those nuances and understand like each other's background and where the other person is going, and just have those casual conversations when you're not in the same space ever. I think her and I have been in the same room 3 times in a month.
Wow, yeah, that's very little.
But I think my old supervisor, the one from a couple years ago, because he was an asker and because he would like encourage me to be an asker sometimes, just very casually and not like pushing it on me and never using those words. I think that made a huge difference in me pushing me to be an asker, and then you pushing me to be an asker, and like that idea of if your mouth is shut, you're not going to eat. Is that how you said it?
Closed mouths don't get fed.
Closed mouths don't get fed. That's better. Like having that ask culture around me. So I guess being like submerged in that ask culture with so many of my friends being ask culture people, it like kind of encouraged me to do that too. So I wonder if it would be the same with you if you suddenly stepped into a group of friends that were all guessers. Would you suddenly have more guess mentalities?
Well, I would say I did start developing a lot of those mentalities because as you move up as a, in whatever corporation you're in, as you move up to manage more people, I found that you run into a lot more guessers than askers. So, yeah, I had to learn that kind of quickly that if I'm too abrupt with some people, they would just shut down and not not want to do anything. So I learned to have to realize a person is a guesser, which I really didn't have a phrase for it or a word for it, but those people who are like that, to take it easy on them. Now, the people who are askers, you can be hard on those people. You can you can kind of lean on them a lot more and kind of push them to do more things because they are kind of a little more blunt, so they don't care if you're being blunt to them. But yeah, noticing the guessers is critical, I think, to being in management. And not taking advantage of those people, basically, and forcing them to do stuff, but, really trying to make sure they're still somewhat comfortable in whatever you have them doing, which I think is kind of important. Like, not just to get the job done, to at least like the job enough that they want to stay. It's a fine line, a very, very fine line.
Yeah, I feel like as a supervisor, you were learning so much about interpersonal communication and just understanding personalities and how they work together, especially in a place like Home Depot where you have almost no control over who comes in. You're like, oh, I'm going to get this random person today, and then they're going to move to a different department in 3 weeks. And
Yep. And of all age groups, there's no set age group you're ever going to be in charge of. So you really can have people who are retired and are coming into work and they're, 65, 70. Well, whatever personality they have now is not changing. You can't really, quote unquote, fix that. All you can do is ride it out and adjust to whatever they need. Now, the younger kids, you can kind of, they still can be molded a little bit more, a little bit more. So you can kind of encourage them to be, more assertive or less assertive if they need to be, but when they're younger. But yeah, as people get, 30, 40, 50, it's too late. It's too late. Just let that go. That's a project that you don't need to waste time on.
true. Um, yeah. I'm trying to think like back to Home Depot because I had a more consistent coworker set then. Now it's essentially just me and my supervisor, and I never see her. And then I work with like one PE teacher for a month. And so I just very quickly have to learn like, what do they need from me? How am I going to communicate with them?
Yeah, and I think a lack of proximity really does make that harder, especially if you are a guesser and you rely on those social cues to kind of make decisions. Like a lack of, proximity makes that much more difficult. Like I see my people all the time, so, it's not a big deal, but not seeing people for, weeks at a time makes it a lot more difficult to gauge how they respond to something. So yeah, I can see how that can be a severe problem.
Especially when they're new to the team. Like my supervisor before her, if we had been going through this right now, I think we would be just fine. I don't know if he's an asker or guesser. I have to think really hard about this. Um anyway, like we knew each other well enough. We'd been working together for enough time that we could be away from each other for a couple weeks and get along just fine and like know what the other person needed, and if we didn't, we're comfortable enough to just ask.
Makes sense. The last kind of thing we have on here is, right or wrong. And really, there's not a right or wrong way to be when it comes to this. I think so much of normal, relationship, normal behavior has to involve both. Like you have to, especially being able to read a room. And if you are a guesser in a room of askers, you have to kind of, buck up a little bit and assert yourself more, or they will just run you over because they don't have any, they have no filter, no real, stopping mechanism to just say, oh, this person is kind of feeling left out or off to the side. You're in a room full of guests and you're an asker, you're going to have a tough time if you don't understand that you being straightforward or blunt is just going to make people not like you. So it's a fine line there.
I've done this a couple times with a bunch of different people though. Sometimes I'll just tell people what I need to hear because I'm like, I can't wait for you to figure it out. And if I sit here and just like play this game all day, I'm never going to get what I need.
Mhm.
So this is what I need to hear from you right now. And then they say it to me. I'm like, cool, thanks. Now I can move on.
Like what I need right now is a yes or no, period. Everything in between is wasted time.
But sometimes it's like, I need you to ask me a specific question. Like the other day, I asked Pierce to ask me something. Because I was just like having a hard time picking up the phone and calling somebody. I was like, will you just tell me to do it? I just need somebody else to do it. And I
Well,
can't make somebody else do it, but I can. I can just ask somebody else to ask me to do the thing that I need to do, and then I can do it because adulting is hard.
don't we know? Don't we know that?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys. This has been fun. I hope you guys are able to figure out whether you're an asker or a guesser. Let us know because I think it's interesting. And let us know what you think of today's episode.
Yep. And we will be launching a YouTube page by the time this is posted. So we will have all the old episodes uploaded. So that'll be coming very soon.
Also, we have an Instagram. We are having some technical difficulties with said Instagram, but it's up and it's under at Coffee Side Chats with the S. So Facebook
the
and
S.
Twitter are Coffee Side Chat. Instagram is Coffee Side Chats.
With an S, yes.
And you can always email us at coffeesidepodcast@gmail.com. All one word.
Absolutely.
Sweet. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Bye.